Hello my friends, it seems like it is already happening. Russians have started their attack in Pokrovsk direction. Before they accumulated forces, and the last night they went forward in attack, actually gaining this piece of the ground. Let's go to the timeline. So it was yesterday and it is today. So you see they fully occupied Poltavka and went forward. And again, just for you to see, yeah? This is the green color because this Ukrainian counteroffensive happened 2 weeks ago. In the deep state military map, if Ukrainian territorial gains are more than 2 weeks, they change the color. So what is here? Russians went through this river a little further. Those are fields, but they established the control over Poltavka. It's the small village. Let me show you the satellite. Yeah, so just a few of the streets. Nevertheless, they have the opportunity to create the bridgehead in Poltavka. So Ukraine counterattacks from those sides in Pankivka, Mayak, and further to the south, also pushing from this side. Plus Ukraine was capable to cut Russians in Kucherev Yar. There are not many soldiers, but still they are unable to receive normal supplies. All the supply deliveries are organized by Russians using drones. And why do Russians continue to use drones to supply this area? Because Ukraine has to use extra resources to encircle Russians here. And while Ukrainian army tries to avoid losses, attacking Kucherev Yar for now, and there's just a tiny place where Russians are presented. But they are still under constant drone threat. Nevertheless, they are marked on this map. I think there are less than 100 soldiers there, judging on activity reported. Also, Ukraine was capable to cut the ground supplies for this Russian group. However, for the last night, Russians tried this offensive. So their idea is try to push Ukraine somehow in this place, at least from one side. From this side, from this, it's absolutely not possible. But potentially here it could be the problem for Ukrainian army, because if Russians move further, they may cut the supplies for Ukrainian army in this entire place. As you may see, there is the road ongoing from the north to the south, sideways also here. So the idea for the Russian military command to cut it over here is pretty much understandable. And actually it might look like an initial phase of the major Russian attack attempt in Pokrovsk direction. For now they are looking for the possible weak spots in Ukrainian defense, and they want to regain those territories under control back, because that is how they were capable actually to proceed to Zoloty Kolodets and break through Ukrainian main defense line. That's what they want to do here, yeah? Zoloty Kolodets, it was previously occupied, later on liberated by Ukrainian emergency brigades. I guess it happened roughly 2 months ago, but Ukraine since that time managed to break the initiative, and now Russia tries to get it back. As well as they went recently closer to Pokrovsk and they operate with their sabotage groups out there. And we have the report from the Myko Center 3 OSINT analytic. He shows this military map. Definitely Russians went deeper. In the deep state military map it is something like here, but we have the drone evidence, probably I'm gonna show you a little later, that Russians are very close to this important road, and their idea is actually to cut it, and that is how Ukrainian group here will be forced to leave this area or to organize defense in multiple of directions, which is also not profitable, as you might understand. So yeah, let's go to the Mykosk interactive map. Here you can see that Russia is using aviation bombs, hitting Ukrainian positions in those villages, actually stopping or slowing down Ukrainian counteroffensive actions here. Plus they dropped the gliding bombs here before starting this offensive, so attack on Ukrainian positions. We have geolocation confirmation that's exactly the same lake here. Yeah, I can even see it on those images. But Ukraine is using drones. For example, this one was a report on Telegram channel. Yeah, actually it's just a compilation, some sort of the cut of the drone drops and FPV drones, but analytics were capable to identify some of the locations, and one of those is very close to the supply road that I showed you already before. So that's the furthest point where Russians were capable to go. And I guess the local hub for Ukrainian supplies is Sofivka, because this village is kind of large compared to others in the place. Well, I think that Ukrainian military command have decided not to put too much forces in this place because of the Russian threats, Russian aviation bombs. But I think that Ukraine should press the Russians from this flank. Otherwise, they definitely create the threat for this entire region. Yesterday, Commander Sirski attended Pokrovsk direction where they negotiated something. So my take was that Ukraine probably is preparing to cut Russians completely here and jam them, forcing them to surrender, because after all, the presence of the Russian army in this place is not a good thing. But with those territorial gains of the Russian army and with this movement of their forces, I think that Ukraine tries to send its resources to compensate possible Russian major strikes in Pokrovsk direction. By the way, here you may see that Ukraine is using drones to hit Russian vehicles far behind the front line. I wonder what that vehicle is. We have it on X, on Twitter. Oh, it is even artillery system and MTLB vehicle. Okay. Some artillery shells are there, and it's not the only transport, it is also some sort of the supply vehicle, could be. And this is the transport for the Russian infantry with some of the anti-drone protection, but it didn't help. And yeah, many more vehicles. This is Bukhanka van, and this is one more Bukhanka van. Bukhanka means loaf because it looks like loaf. So thank you, Russians, for geolocating your losses. Now we have it on the map. Also, we have this video from Magyar. Some of the Russian soldiers in Pokrovsk direction, they tried to hide underground even. This is the small tunnel which is usually located under the road, and there is the Russian soldier hiding. I cannot show you what happened to him later. You know about the restrictions and limits here. Nevertheless, I shared this video on my Telegram channel. Well, I can tell you, this Russian soldier went outside and was kaputted. It's obvious, yeah? And also this video showed us the razor wire presented on the front lines. It is all around. This war looks more and more like a First World War. And here's one more reason why it looks the same, because Russians are starting to preparing their forces to ride the horses. It is the official report from the Russia Today. They say it's the real cavalry drills of the 9th motorized rifle brigade of the Russian army. Russians, don't push the horses. You know, there were several of the cases, and then Russians came out with crazy initiatives. At first we laughed on those, but later on the Ukrainian army started to use the same things, like for example drone protection of armored vehicles, tanks, with those grills on top of the tanks at the very beginning of the war, or with the hangar tanks. Ukraine does similar stuff now. Donkeys, well, in some of the cases I may understand even that, because there are some of the trails difficult terrain, and also motorcycles, they're loud, unlike donkeys, yeah, so in some of the specific cases even donkeys are acceptable. But horses, can they be used the same way as donkeys? Probably not. They're not so versatile for carrying munition and attacking on the horses like they do on motorcycles. They're too slow. So for now, I don't see the reason why they do it. Well, maybe in the future I'll understand it, but for now I don't see it as a good idea. Yeah, first of all for the horses, but how can you reverse, you know, what was happening in First World War on the current battlefield? For me, I don't see it. This is kind of the rare video we have. I hope you can see it on your screens, again filmed from the phone. This is the Russian Lancet drone, yeah, this dark spot. And here is a Ukrainian drone interceptor. And let's see what happens. Chasing, yeah? Boom. Nice. I think it was filmed not really far away from the front lines, or maybe at the front lines, because Russia operates their Lancets over there. Oh wow, we have one more bada boom. For now it's been just a report. I am waiting for the visual confirmation, fire or something, but Russians now hesitate to publish those kind of the videos online, but I think after all we'll see it. So this is the fuel storage located in Tver Oblast. In this facility fuel goes after it's been refined, so Russia is in lack of the refinery capabilities, but soon will be in lack even of storage capabilities, and Russians confirm this information. By the way, Russian military channels that the facility is kaputted. I still wonder how many tanks were hit out there, and Ukraine is using already cruise missiles on territory of Russia, like for example Neptune missile. There were 4 of them used on Russian electrical facility that was the part of the network of the Russian military gear production. Every night we see that stuff happening in Russia. And that's how Russians decided to protect their refineries. You can see the similar cages they use on their tanks, some sort of the grills, but it's all around. However, I think Ukraine is still capable to penetrate all of that with some sort of the napalm, shrapnel, shells. I think it is possible. Russians, you see, they constructed kind of the huge pie with many of the layers there. So Ukraine now has to circumnavigate even that protection. But I guess for Flamingo missile with 1-ton warhead, it doesn't really matter if those nets are out there or not. Everything will be kaputted because it's too heavy. It's like huge aviation bomb. Right, about the case with the Russian helicopter Mi-8 that was shot down yesterday, I recorded the video about it. Actually, it was more or less soft landing under current conditions. Nevertheless, Russians say about forever memory for those who were flatlined in this aviation accident. Judging on this Russian message, I understand that some people survived and some not. But after all, it's the very successful operation of Ukrainian Armed Forces and Magyar Birds unit. Fantastic. And interesting information came from the Ukrainian Deputy of the Defense Minister, Lieutenant General Ivan Gavriluk, who told to BBC Ukraine that our army is waiting for Gripen jets and they will be in Ukraine. As far as I remember, the talks about Gripens are ongoing since 2023. Sometimes Ukrainian officials say that the deal is in process. Sometimes they say, no, it's not profitable for us. We should concentrate on different fighter jets like Mirage 2000 and F-16. But now we have this new information, and Ivan Gavriluk was sure that Ukraine is going to obtain those fighter jets. Well, it's gonna be good if it is real. We have already comment from Sweden. They say that the final decision has not yet been taken for the supplyment of the fighter jets to Ukraine, but negotiations continue. Okay, guys, as for the vehicle losses, we have this count for the last week. So Russia lost totally 38 of the vehicles, Ukraine 25. Sadly, this time Ukraine lost many of the battle tanks, 5. Well, for Russia it's 7, but still this number is big for Ukraine, judging on the Ukrainian military resources and production capabilities. Basically, Ukraine cannot produce tanks any longer. It may just obtain those from our allies, and our allies, they hesitate to send new tanks to Ukraine. I think that the last time Australia sent their Abrams tanks to Ukraine, actually they sent more tanks than United States. But so far, they haven't been spotted on the front lines. Probably Ukraine is doing some of the extra maintenance, modernization of the tanks for them to fit the standards of the drone war. For sure, they require the anti-drone warfare protection, cages, contact one armor, as Ukraine likes to put in the tanks. But yeah, this number is actually big. 5 tanks per week. Too much. So the idea for Russia now is to exhaust the Ukrainian army resources, and that's how they think that they may propel on the front lines. And if we go back to the deep state military map for a while, definitely there are some of the areas where Russia moves every day. Like for example in Dnipropetrovsk region, also in Zaporizhia and Donetsk region. So here is the main Russian attack. They want to reach this road once again. There was the front line update even today, you see. And if we zoom out once again and go 1 week ago, just a single week, you see that Russians actually move here. It's not a good sign, absolutely, and Ukraine obviously needs more reinforcements, more resources to handle those Russian small attacks that sometimes, like over here, may go into the penetration of Ukrainian defense lines. The front lines are very long and Russia attacks in multiple directions. Yes, they have a couple of the main directions, but the Russian army strategy is to cause Ukraine to disperse the forces all around. Does it work? Well, sometimes it might work, but still Russia is far, far away from reaching its goals of the special military operation or from occupying Donbass. No, after all, they move very, very slow. Oh, Russian army needs more meat. So Putin yesterday signed the order to conscript 135,000 Russian young soldiers. Yeah, Russia has the conscription service, it's around 1 year, but after that year, Russian army proposes to those conscripts to join the Russian contract army, and in many of the cases, they cannot refuse. It is one of those ways of how Russian army may get some people without announcing a massive full-scale mobilization in Russian society. Russia has 2 of those conscription waves per year, and each one counts roughly 130-150,000. Autumn wave and the spring one, and even if the half of the Russian soldiers refuse to sign the contract with the Russian army, somehow the 100,000 soldiers at least are still available for Russia. And we know that conscripts, they also take the part in military action. For example, in Belgorod Oblast, in Kursk Oblast, there were many conscripts who were on board of the Moskva ship, because Russian army needs this unqualified personnel to serve as well. Again, it tells that Russia has way more resources compared to Ukraine. Idea for Russia is to continue the war until Ukraine is exhausted. That's why the military support of Ukraine is so important. The war like that may finish only if one side gets exhausted of the war. And I guess that after all it's gonna be Russia, because there are some of the not good events happening for the Russian regime. Orban, long time no see, he went to some sort of the studio where he was speaking about Ukraine, saying that Ukraine is not an independent state and it depends on NATO and European Union. Yeah, for now it is like that because it's the war. It's a very good thing that democracies are helping Ukraine. All except Hungary, because Hungary under Orban is not a democracy. Here Orban complained about Ukrainians who said about Hungarians' drones, which are flying few meters into Ukrainian territory. Actually, it was not few meters. They went quite far into Ukrainian airspace, and he says, so what? And so what? So he recognized that those were Hungarian drones flying. He didn't say those were not our drones, Ukraine tells lies. No, he said, and so what? You know, what can you do to us? You're dependent on us, and we are the part of NATO, we're a part of EU. I think that Orban took entire European Union as his hostage, because there should be some of the decisions taken involving the voices from all of the EU member countries. And as we know, Orban blocks lots of the decisions. But no worries, the next year his party will lose elections in Hungary, the same as the Russian party lost elections in Moldova. Oh, Denmark is also conscripting their soldiers. Here we speak about few hundred men, not about hundreds of thousands as in Russia. They just call some people from reserves. It is connected to the meeting of the European Union leaders, which will ongo in Denmark soon. So security measures, probably those soldiers will monitor the situation with the drones. That's probably the only reason. I would not over-exaggerate this stuff, okay? Germany will supply to Ukraine 2 of the Patriot systems till the end of the year. Fantastic news, which are coming, by the way, from the defense minister of Germany, Pistorius. I hope he mentioned not the launchers, but the systems, which are way bigger than just 2 of the launchers. Yeah, of course, we're speaking about systems. Yeah, Ukraine needs those, absolutely, and also Ukraine needs Patriot missiles, PAC-3 version, capable to shut down Russian ballistic missiles. Yeah, luckily there is an initiative for European Union countries to purchase weapons for Ukraine from the United States. At least like that, Ukraine may obtain air defense missiles. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do here on YouTube, please support me on membership of this channel or join my Patreon. The link for my Patreon is in the video description just below. Thank you so much, guys. Without your support, my job wouldn't be possible. So thank you, especially for those who support what I do. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.